Right, good morning, everyone. Well, actually, it's good morning if you're watching from where my class is today, from Ontario, Canada. Hello, Mrs. Clemens' class. If you guys can just give me a wave. Great. Now, it's afternoon here. I am reporting from Cape Town, South Africa. My name is Tamlin Hardy, and I'm the Education Manager for SANCCOB. Over here on my lap, this is Princess. Hello. Princess is an endangered, ooh, bless you. Don't worry, penguins sneeze all the time. It's not a problem. They drink salt water and they sneeze out the salt. So don't worry, she's not sick or anything. So this is Princess. Princess is an endangered African penguin. And she is one of our permanent residences here at the SANCCOB facility in Cape Town. Now, there are many things that bug Princess. She's a very fussy girl. She's actually our spokesmodel, you know. She's the one on our posters and our Christmas cards and things like that. So she's very, very fussy. But nothing really bugs Princess more than plastic pollution. And the lesson today is actually going to be about plastic pollution. And I'm going to show you some real cases of plastic pollution that have come in at SANCCOB, because I think we hear about plastic pollution and you think, oh, you know, is this really that much of a problem? Does it actually affect as many animals as people say it does, or is this just being blown out of proportion? So the whole reason why I want to talk about plastic pollution is because of this thing right here. So I'm going to share my screen so you can see what I see. Ooh. Now this thing here, you might have heard of this as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, and I'm talking about this one here that says North Pacific Gyre in it. Now, there are actually 5 of these plastic patches in the ocean, so it's not that there's just this one giant patch, but the one that everyone calls the North Pacific Garbage Patch is the largest one out of all of them, and it's supposed to be about 2 times, 3 times the size of Texas, actually. Now, what's interesting is it's not a solid mass of plastic. It'll actually look like completely normal ocean. And if you are out by the ocean and you look out at the sea, that is what it'll look like. You don't see stuff floating in the water. There aren't bottles and all these things floating around. There are actually tiny pieces of microscopic plastic in the water, about 100 million tons worth of plastic, just in that one little spot over there. So today we're going to talk about where all this plastic comes from and some actual cases that we've had at SANCCOB. Now, the first thing is we do have issues with cable ties and loops from plastic. Now, box bands and other loops formed by rubbish can end up entangling land and sea animals to the point where they are slowly strangled to death. Make sure all loop trash is cut before disposal. And if you can recycle it, that would be great. Otherwise, you are essentially throwing a noose into the environment. So looking at this, I've actually got 2 pictures of actual cases that we've dealt with here. The first is a Cape cormorant. Now, the Cape cormorant is endangered. They've got, they're beautiful black birds, and they've got a little bit of yellow at the bottom of the beak and these bright blue eyes. And this cormorant actually wound up getting a plastic ring in its mouth and then over its head. Now, luckily, he came into the center before he starved to death, and we managed to cut it away and fatten him up. But this is a case where we weren't as lucky. The next one here, this is an African penguin where the same thing has happened. He has tried to bite into a loop of plastic, and unfortunately, it's gotten caught over his head. Now, what's very worrying about this is that that plastic is actually completely blocking the passageway for food to enter the penguin. So this guy isn't going to be able to eat at all. And what's even more concerning is you can see he's in the ocean. He's not at our facility. So trying to catch this bird would be very, very difficult. Something else with plastic pollution is that straws suck, and they really, really do. And I actually didn't know that straws were this bad until I started working here. Now, straws are one of the most common rubbish items found on our beaches. Much like plastic bags, straws are often swallowed by marine creatures, resulting in blockages, which ultimately cause death. Refuse this luxury item next time you buy a cool drink or a milkshake. You'll be surprised at how unnecessary it is. So next time you go to the McDonald's or something like that and they offer you a straw with your drink, rather just don't take it, because straws are troublesome for reasons like this. Now here we had a cormorant that had swallowed a straw, and you can see in the second picture here that we actually had to cut into the neck of the cormorant and remove it out of the side. We couldn't just go down its mouth and remove it, or down the throat and remove it, and that's how deep down the straw was. So we had to remove it out that way. And luckily we were able to save this bird. Now, what's interesting about straws is that a lot of people don't realize that there are many recycling plants that can't recycle straws. And this is because straws can be made out of type 2 or type 5 plastic. And because the straws are so small, they never indicate with the little triangle what type of plastic it is. So for many recycling plants, they actually wind up not recycling straws and just throwing them away because they're not sure which of the plastics they're made out of. So unless you have a recycling plant where they can work with both type 2 and 5 plastics, then you're going to have an issue. So even if you do throw away your straws, keep in mind that not all countries and certainly not all cities are able to actually recycle straws so that they can be used for something else. Next is definitely a huge issue, and for you guys that are watching in North America, it's definitely an issue that happens more in the Northern Hemisphere than it does here in the Southern Hemisphere, is using bottles. Now, 1,500 plastic bottles wind up in the ocean every second. And South African tap water, but obviously I'm just talking about where I live, is actually very safe to drink and amongst the best in the world. Often bottled water is no different from tap water. Bottled water is expensive due to the apparent convenience, and the result is just more unnecessary plastic waste that ends up in the environment. Keep a reusable bottle handy and fill it up with tap water or at a water cooler. Now here I want to talk about this little guy, and he came into the center not too long ago. He was here about a month ago, and this bird, this is called a giant blue petrel. They're really, really beautiful birds. They've got lovely personalities, and this guy wound up dying because he swallowed a single bottle cap. And I'm actually going to take the picture off of him, and I'll stop sharing so I can look at you guys while I tell you the story. There we go. So this poor petrel wound up dying because he swallowed one bottle cap, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Such a no, no. Sorry, she's playing with the bottle cap. It's kind of crazy if you think about it, that such a big, beautiful bird can be taken down by such a little thing. And what happened was when he swallowed the bottle cap, it lodged at the bottom of his stomach, and then this stopped food from moving from his stomach to the rest of his intestines. So basically what happened is this bird slowly starved to death over many days, and it must have been a very painful way to die. Now here at SANCCOB, we're lucky that we have an X-ray. So we did X-ray him, and we saw in his stomach that there was a blockage. There was something there. So we gave him medicine to help move along. But obviously, medicine isn't going to move plastic out of your system. So unfortunately, there was nothing that we could do. And it was only after this bird had died and we performed post-mortem that we saw that he died because he'd swallowed plastic. And I wish I could say that this is an isolated case and it, almost never happens, but it's not true. We get tons of cases in where plastic pollution has caused problems for these birds. Our princess is getting up because she's so mad about it. So guys, if you do use plastic, because I understand plastic isn't everything, plastic is in our cell phones, our clothing that we wear, because nylon is a type of plastic. I understand that plastic is everywhere. And I'm not saying never use plastic again, because that's very difficult to do. But if you do use plastic, you should really consider recycling it, especially if you live in a city or if you live in the part of the world where it's easy to get recyclable materials out to recycling plants. So certainly, if you are using things like plastic bags, it's time to get rid of them. A plastic bag has a lifespan of 20 minutes and takes decades to degrade. It's time to use cotton bags instead, or paper bags if you go shopping for your groceries. If you have an option of having a can of Coke or a bottle of Coke, you should buy the can, because most cans are actually made out of recycled cans. Because what's also interesting is plastic can't be recycled to make more plastic bottles, if that makes sense. So you can recycle plastic to be used to make different types of things, but a plastic bottle can't be recycled and then made into another plastic bottle. But cans, that can actually happen. So just keep that in mind next time that you go out and you use plastic, that bottle caps and plastic bottles and these things actually do get picked up by animals, especially bottle caps, because they get confused for food that they can eat. So keep that in mind. Please recycle your plastic. Now, I'm going to field questions from the class that's watching in Canada, and then I'll also be here to answer any live questions. So if anyone wants to join in on the chat session and ask me a question there, I'll be happy to help you. But if you're going to tune out for the lesson now, please remember that if you want me to call your classroom and have a Q&A with you, that you're welcome to adopt a penguin with SANCCOB. You can go to our website, www.sanccob.co.za. SANCCOB is spelled SANCCOB, and you'll definitely help us, because every adoption goes towards saving another one of the endangered African penguin. All right, so if you're tuning out, thanks so much for watching. And for my other class in Canada, I'm going to unmute you guys and let's have our session now. All right, Mrs. Clement, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. All right, so let's have some questions. Princess and I will do the best we can to answer you.
Perfect. Okay, come right here to the screen. That is
my name is Brandon, and I was just wondering about how many animals do you have at the shelter?
Okay, well, right now there are about 140 birds here, not just penguins. We save seabirds, so about 140, and there are 33 penguins that actually live at SANCCOB because we can't release them.
Is there also other locations?
Yeah, we have 2 centers in South Africa. We have one in Cape St. Francis, which is in the Eastern Cape, and one in Cape Town, which is where I am, which is in the Western Cape. And the reason why we only have in the Eastern Cape and the Western Cape is because the African penguin doesn't actually live on the other side of South Africa. So it's the only spots where we need to have them.
All right.
Good question. Thank you.
And how long is a typical bird there?
Well, you know, it depends on what's wrong with them. So if someone comes in and he's just a little underweight and a little bit tired and we need to fatten him up, then that could be like a 2 or 3 week visit. But obviously if a bird comes in and it's been attacked by another animal and we have to perform a surgery, and it could actually be several months. So we do have pens that we use if the birds are visiting for a few weeks. And then we also have a home pen that we use for birds that are here for a long, long time. So if, for example, a bird has an operation and we have to shave away a patch of feathers, then we have to wait for that penguin to molt before we can release him. And that can take up to a year, depending on how recently he molted. So we have another separate pen that we use for our long-term patients. But if you come to SANCCOB as an egg, and I've actually got an African penguin egg here to show you. It's pretty cool. Oh, she's looking at the egg. Sorry. I've got an egg here to show you. If they come in as an egg and they're hatched here, it takes about 3 months until we release them, because we'll raise them until they're old enough to survive on their own, and then we'll send them back to the ocean. Good question. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Martha, and I was wondering, how do you adopt a pet, or a penguin, sorry, and what does it mean?
How do you adopt a penguin? Cool, that's a nice question. So the adoption thing, how it works is you, it's a once-off thing. So you go online and then you'll adopt a penguin. I think for you guys are in Canada, I think it's 50 Canadian dollars. If anyone's watching this in the States, it's 40 American dollars, US dollars, sorry, or 500 Rand where I am. And basically what that means is you get to name the penguin, and it's a real bird that was actually here. So it's not like we're just making up a penguin story for you. So it's a real bird, and all the way from South Africa, we post you an adoption pack. So in the pack, it has the name that you chose, a picture of the bird that you selected, as well as the history of the bird. So when it came here, what was wrong, what we did, when it was released, and all that jazz. And basically that, 50 Canadian dollars, it pays for the rehabilitation fees for that bird. So it pays for the medicine and the fish that we would have used to keep that bird happy and healthy. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that you can take it home with you. Penguins aren't pets. It's illegal to have a penguin as a pet. But what it means is that you can, that you'll get a certificate and you'll help us. Essentially, you'll just help us take care of the birds, because SANCCOB is a non-profit. And in order to do the important work that we do, it all comes from donations and from people adopting penguins and doing that type of thing. Good question. Thank you.
Do we have time for one more?
Yeah, no, go for it.
Okay, Maddie.
Hi, my name is Maddie. How did you get interested in doing this?
That's a good question, Maddie. Well, when I was younger, I was always involved in animal rescue things, like I would walk dogs and go to the cat shelter and brush the cats, and I was always involved in those types of things, but never more than a volunteer. And then I studied and I became a maths teacher, and I actually taught high school maths for a couple of years. And then this job came up, and I thought, wow, I can tame penguins for a living. That sounds really, really cool. And as soon as I got here, I realized that I loved it so much. So for me, it was never that from when I was born, I was like, I will save penguins. This is what I meant to do. It kind of just happened, but it's great how life can unfold that way sometimes. That's maybe something that you don't think you're super interested in. All of a sudden, you realize you're very passionate about. So that's a cool question, and I hope that you find that passion and that drive in your life.
Okay, go ahead. Get right down so she can see you. See the screen.
My name is Maya. Are you like a zoologist, a marine biologist?
No, I'm not. I'm a high school maths teacher. I didn't study marine biology or anything, because if you want to work with animals and you want to make a difference, you need to be passionate and you need to love your job. I think that's more important than the piece of paper. Obviously, if you want to be a vet, you should study to be a vet. As a maths teacher, I'm certainly not going to try and be a veterinarian. But a lot of the people that work at SANCCOB have done things like nature conservation, or, marine biology, or, things that are more related to nature things. But it's certainly not that you have to study something in that line. For example, we have people here that are anthropologists, and an anthropologist has nothing to do with penguins, and so no, I'm not a marine biologist. I'm just a math teacher. I'll take one more question and then I've got to go. Sorry.
Okay, me again. So do you have any pets at home, and if so, what are their names?
Do I have any pets at home? I do. I have 2 cats named Baby and Pepper, and they are lovely. Yeah, I grew up with lots of pets, but I must admit, I love my cats very, very much. All my other pets are back home, still living with my parents, but cats are with me. Good question. Thank you. I hope that you have pets at home too, because pets make a home.
Thank you. We're using this project to kick off. We're studying pressing global issues. And we're looking at it on a. Just wondering if in any of your research Would you find plastic in any countries or areas of the world more than others?
Well, certainly for plastic, it seems like a lot of the overuse of plastic did come from the throwaway lifestyle, which started to emerge more in the 50s. And there was certainly also a surge of plastic use during and after the Second World War, because people started, plastic started to be in a much higher demand because other materials that would normally be used, like tin, for example, were being used in the Second World War. So all of a sudden, plastic was being used more and more and more and more for other things. And then throwaway living in the 50s was kind of like this time where you would use something and you could just throw it away, and that was it. It was easy, like plastic knives and forks and things, and it took away washing dishes, and lifestyle was just use it once and throw it away. And then certainly advances in technology caused plastic to be used a lot more. So, if you think like our cell phones, for example, cell phones are mostly made out of plastic covers and things like that. So it seems like it was more a progression of technology and of lifestyle and things like that. And then people being unaware started throwing these things away, and recycling wasn't really a thing, where you had to think, when I throw this away, where does it actually go? What actually happens to it? So there definitely is more of a trend for plastic pollution when it comes to the northern hemisphere, just because that part of the world is a bit more developed. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really make a difference, because the currents in the ocean are going to take most plastic to those gyres that we saw. So even if, for example, if the bulk of plastic was coming from China, or if the bulk of plastic was coming from South Africa, it would still pretty much wind up in the same spot as it is, because most plastic in the ocean actually does come from land and from it winding up there. But when it comes to affecting animals, there is a very strong trend. It's not isolated cases. There's definitely a huge problem. There was a guy here at the center today from Chicago, and he was talking about in his part of the world where every couple of months there would be like a whale that washed up ashore dead, and that they'd often find that these whales had just suffocated because they'd eaten so much plastic and so much rubbish. And there is a lot of garbage in the ocean. And what's very troubling is that the garbage in the ocean, we can't really remove it because it's microscopic. The sun breaks down plastic until it gets to this microscopic size. So if we wanted to take out all of that plastic, realistically, we would be killing thousands and thousands, if not millions, of marine life, plankton and things like that, by trying to remove the bits of plastic. It would be very, very difficult. So all we can really do now is just to try and stop it from getting worse, and to try and do the best we can to reverse the changes. And guys, it actually is possible. It really is. I don't know if you guys know much about ozone watch, but over the last few years, the ozone layer actually has been getting a lot healthier, and I think that's because of drastic changes that have been made by people all over the world, and by corporates all over the world, and how they develop things, and what petrol we use, or fuel, you guys for fuel, sorry, what fuel we use and things like that. So I don't want to say that plastic pollution is mostly a one country thing or one part of the world thing, because the consequences are the same. It affects our oceans everywhere, and it's a global crisis. So it's certainly not isolated to particular groups. Although certainly it can be said that the majority of plastic does come from certain countries. That is definitely true, but
All right, do you have one last question?
Does that mean we should throw out our water bottles, or should we continue to recycle them?
Right. If you have water bottles, you should recycle them. But I think what's important is maybe if you're someone that likes to drink water a lot during the day, maybe instead buy because plastic bottles you can actually only reuse a certain number of times before you need to throw it away because it will become unhealthy for you to use it. So maybe if you have plastic bottles, just consider buying one glass bottle, and then you could use that one glass bottle for years. You know what I mean? The plastic bottle you could only use for a few months, maybe, and then you'd have to throw it away. So, you know, I would say if you have plastic bottles, use them until you can't anymore, then recycle them, and you should buy a glass bottle and just put your water in there.
Perfect.
Cool.
All right, well, thank you very much. That was very informative.
That's great. Well, guys, let's wave goodbye to Princess. Bye-bye. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, guys. Have a nice day.